So a lot of veterans leaving the military service, it's a very turbulent time for them. Separating from a very conscripted and organized and specific culture that the military has is a lot different than, applying to schools, going to a community college, which a lot of people choose to go to, a small private school, a state school, what have you. It's very, very different. Even joining the workforce. There's a tragic number of homeless veterans and veterans that commit suicide because, in part, the transition is so difficult. So for me, the solution was to prepare for everything. Find something that I was very interested in doing, going back to school, and commit everything to it. And that's the thing, I think, the advice that I would give to other vets. If you want to do it, you have to commit yourself. It can't be a half decision, a meantime decision. It has to be something that you are, I'm going to do this and I'm going to complete it. And I'm going to do the best of my ability. And whether that's starting a community college and transferring somewhere, whether that's just going straight to a state school, your local school, choosing somewhere you want to live and go to school, you have to commit yourself to it. And you have to take the tools that you learned in the military and you have to apply them to not only applying to these schools, but once you get there, succeeding and eventually graduating.
Welcome, listeners, to a very special Veterans Day episode of Meet Princeton. We're so glad you could join us. Each year, the university and community gather to honor Veterans Day at the University Chapel. The Veterans Day observance includes a presentation of the colors by the Princeton University ROTC Tiger Battalion cadets and others. Speaking of tigers, in just a moment, we'll hear from our very inspiring student guest, Kaller Roemer, who is, among other things, president of the Ivy League Veterans Council. But first, did you know that Princeton especially welcomes applications from those of you who have actively served in the U.S. military? Those students can apply to Princeton through the same process as other prospective undergraduates, either as a first year or as a transfer student. If you have any specific questions about that application process for U.S. military applicants, you can contact my wonderful colleague, Alex Buston, champion of veterans and senior associate dean and director of military and veteran admission at abustin@princeton.edu. That's ABUSTIN @princeton.edu. Did you also know that Princeton participates in the Yellow Ribbon program and doesn't limit the number of students eligible for the program? Also, just saying, we are a proud partner with Service to School and a host campus to the Warrior Scholar Project and a close partner of the Leadership Scholar Program. Now, let's get back to what you've all been waiting for, our student guest, Kaller Roemer, a U.S. Army veteran and class of 2023 who is studying Political Economy and Entrepreneurship.
My name is Kaller Roemer. I'm in the class of 2023. I'm studying comparative politics with the track in political economy and a certificate in entrepreneurship. I'm from Southern California originally, but God, that was so long ago now, I don't even feel like that's home anymore. So Princeton's home now. My path and story is a little atypical of the average Princeton student. And I share this in common a lot with a lot of military or veterans on campus and transfer students in general. In high school, I was a star athlete. I had a lot of prospects for scholarships in football and track and field. My academics weren't exactly a priority at the time. I was a wide receiver. My roommate was a quarterback. So we spent all of our time together. Life was football. And I loved it. It was a lot of fun. It was something that I was good at. I enjoyed doing, and that's rare to find in life. I was injured not long after going to Humboldt State, and I kind of realized, I took a step back and realized that, maybe my priorities weren't allowing me to succeed as much as I would like to. So I reassessed everything, and I decided that I was going to, leave school and get to work, try to figure my life out, see what I wanted, some direction other than an athletic career. Which, unless you make it to the professional level, it's not exactly a career path. So I needed to discover myself a little more. Leaving school was a great decision. I was distracted. I was wasting time. And I got to work. I needed to eat. I wanted to get, wear nice clothes and, drive around, pay for gas, all those things. So my mother's a bookkeeper, and I got a job at her office, and when she worked for someone else at the time. And I also, this is a funny job that I found actually surfing. I met a guy who ran a mushroom farm for high-end restaurants. So it's like, these fancy mushrooms, fungi that these high-end restaurants would pay a crazy amount for. And he'd grow them, cultivate them, grow them, harvest, weigh them, and I'd deliver them. So I woke up, drove out to, the middle of LA and weighed a bunch of mushrooms, sorted them out, and took off driving around from, Manhattan Beach to Hollywood, Santa Monica, downtown. At this same time that I was working, that's not the full picture. I was trying to figure out who I was. I had friends that were in the same position. I think all of my friends, save a few, were kind of a little bit lost. And, I look back on that time in my life as a time of like despondency and doubt in myself. My daily routine was in direct conflict with my inherent values that I hold for myself. I wanted more. I wasn't happy with the station I found myself in. So, again, after some reflection has happened quite a bit in my life. I've had to take a step back and think about where I am and where I want to be. Actually, during this time, I kind of figured out a good friend was arrested for something, a good childhood friend. We had fallen out a little bit, but was arrested. At this time, I think like 3 people that I knew from high school had overdosed and died. And it was like a real rough time. It was like a couple of years after high school, and people were starting, like me, trying to figure out where they fit in this big world we have. And I knew that, like, the thing that I always tell people is, despair has a gravitational pull. And if you get stuck in one of these holes or one of these cyclones, it's tough to get out of. And thankfully, my family is a great point of support for me. I always have been. And my father was a Marine, and my grandfather was in the Army Air Corps, and was a Navy pilot as well. So for me, for a lot of people, I think the military is always an option. But whether it's ever taken seriously as a potential path for you to take personally, that's a big switch that has to be made. I'm not the dad did it, grandpa did it, so I'm going to do it too. That was never really how it was for me. My dad was in Vietnam, but it was never like a huge piece of his identity, if that makes sense. So I never felt pressured to do it. The big answer for me was kind of 3 options: was find a career path that I could start in now and start building towards a career for the rest of my life. 2, go to school, or 3, join the military. The military went from being an option to, just a generic option to a great option. I knew that I was an athlete. I could do the physical, demands of the job. I was relatively practical in my thinking. I felt that I could fall in line and learn the tactics that are involved with military operations. And, I had the pride and willingness to do it, and the belief in the services. So it became something that, now looking back on, it's the best decision I ever made. So I was in 11 Bravo. I was in for 4 years. I was stationed at Fort Drum with the 10th Mountain Division in the 2nd Battalion, 22nd Infantry Regiment, so nicknamed Triple Deuce. We deployed to Iraq, and we're in Baghdad. And I got out in early 2017. After leaving the military, I knew I wanted to go back to school. It was something that I regretted that I didn't finish school before, knowing that the decision that I had made was ultimately a good one. I still wanted to go back. And at this point, it was something that I wanted an entrepreneurial career. And I knew that school was going to give me knowledge, legitimacy. It was going to do all these things that I needed in order to make my career successful. So I actually shopped around for schools that were small private schools that would be willing to accept me for, with less than stellar, past transcripts and all these things. So I actually got in connection with a small private business school, undergraduate school in Silicon Valley called Menlo College. And to all the veterans out there listening, this is a Princeton podcast, but there's a lot of little schools that'll give you a shot if you're you need that. So, Menlo College actually accepted me with basically just an interview. I went up there, drove up there, and they are very welcoming. I was very happy with the small experience that they offered, similar to Princeton. And, but once I was there for 3 semesters. And after 1 semester, I knew that, again, I was at a station in my life that I wanted more. To put it in a word, I was hungrier than my peers. And all the jobs that I wanted were going to Stanford students about 10 minutes down the road. So it was one of those things, okay, if I want more, I'm performing, I was on Dean's List, top of Dean's List every semester. It's like, okay, well, I can perform now. Obviously, the military gave me the tools that I needed to succeed in this environment, and it was paying out. So it was time for me to take another step back and do an assessment and think about what my options were and what I wanted and what I needed. And again, I fell on the Stanford is what I want. But after really looking at the top schools and the environments that they're all in and the cultures that they all have, Princeton actually became my number one very quickly. There's a series of programs that I got involved with and signed up for, Service to School, the Warrior Scholar Project. They're aimed at veterans going into higher education. So for me, after being at Menlo College, I started applying to these schools, and I did it kind of in a shotgun approach because I have this unique, atypical, background. So I applied to all over the country, 12 schools that were, I wasn't sure if I was going to get into any, but I told my story with brutal honesty, and it resonated with some people. Actually, when Princeton sent the acceptance letter out, I replied and accepted their offer within, I think, 4 hours. My wife is from San Diego. Then she went to school in UC Santa Cruz. She has 2 degrees from Santa Cruz, and she decided to use her artistic skills in interior design and architecture and all that stuff. West Coast interior design, the East Coast interior design is much different. She doesn't have the connections. It's a different job. So she's had to really change her path a little bit. She's really been a great point of support for me. She has kind of been the backbone of the path that we've taken. She's always stood by me, always helped me think practically, and ultimately came with me whenever I've packed this up and moved across the country, which has happened a couple times now. So, for her, it was a big shock, but she's been an awesome asset to have in my corner throughout all this. I got accepted and I hadn't seen campus yet. I'd seen pictures, obviously, but my wife and I flew out here in the summer. It was right after reunions. And so we step on campus. Obviously, we're not used to the Gothic architecture. My wife always says we're in Hogwarts whenever we're talking to other people, because that's how it feels sometimes. The campus post reunions is a much different campus than the middle of the academic year. And so we're thinking in our heads, this place is just a party central. There's just tents everywhere with all these tables and, beer and food's been served everywhere. We're there like the next day. But, obviously somebody explained to me what was going on. Stepping on campus for the first time felt unreal. All of my hard work felt realized. It felt good to know that some of the decisions, not all maybe, but some of the decisions I made were the right decision and ultimately led to where I was. If you can accuse me of anything, you can never accuse me of being unprepared. So I walked into my meeting with my advisor, had a full list of what all 4 years of the classes I was going to take. And I think shocked her a little bit with how much I had. I had, giant Word documents and spreadsheets and grading the different classes and all these things. And also, I've actually scrapped that twice and started over and picked new paths. But for me, it was, I didn't need a lot of guidance. I didn't want a lot of guidance. I needed I need somebody to ask questions too, but I knew ultimately what I wanted. I was here. I'm here for a reason. And I know what that reason is. I learned that there was a possibility that none of the credits that I had taken would transfer pretty quickly. Realistically, with Humboldt State and Menlo College, I had about 2 years of college under my belt. Albeit one of the semesters was 10 years ago. So Princeton ultimately decided that none of the credits that I had would transfer, which ultimately has been a blessing in disguise, because I've gotten to really dive into what the culture is here and all the experience that it has to offer. Now, again, the pandemic threw a wrench in the gears a little bit, but I'm in the Ivy Club. I'm a member of an eating club. I got to take freshman classes. I'm moving into my major classes next year. I took electives, and I really took the liberty when I was choosing these electives of not just necessarily trying to get a great, a class that would just be maybe easy, although I don't know how many easy classes exist at Princeton. But I chose things that I really enjoyed and really wanted to take. I took molecular biology. I took an astrophysics class, which again, in both of those classes, a little over my head. Maybe not totally over my head, but I had absolutely no experience or background in. But I found it fascinating and learned an incredible amount. I mean, I got to take this molecular biology class where we got to viruses and being taught by a Nobel Prize winning virologist in, March. So I'm learning about COVID from one of the brightest minds in the field while it's happening. These are the sort of things at this school that are, are not offered at any other place. It's incredible. Coming to Princeton, I still felt a little out of place walking in on the first day, but, speaking with the students in the classroom has kind of showed me how much more mature they are than at these previous institutions that I've been to. A lot of them have this life experience that has existed in a classroom, and that's about it. And good for them, because they are some of the most brilliant students, young people that I've ever had the fortune of coming into contact with. But the age wasn't the biggest differentiator. It was the experience, the life experience and wisdom level at coming here. I've met students that are, from these incredible families that have had incredible success, while also meeting students from, some areas of the world that they've had to fight every step of the way in order to get here. And they've done an incredible job. I mean, I've had to face things that, most of us have no idea how hard they've worked. I've met Olympians. I've met, some of these people that are just, will be president of the United States one day. I mean, without a doubt. So it's been a pleasure for me to meet a lot of these students. And I think a lot of them see an interesting experience that I and other veterans have had on campus, and they kind of gravitate because it's a unique thing. The student veteran group was one on campus that I immediately was drawn to. There's only a handful of us, and we're all so busy. It's a little difficult to get us all on the same page and moving in the same direction. But, I got involved as soon as I could with the veterans group. And I ran the social media for a semester, and I have no business doing that. I have no social media presence of my own. But it went from that to, getting more involved till it came time for our last president to change over positions. And he asked if I would do it. And I ran unopposed. So I basically volunteered for the position. And, it's my intention to just keep the group going, open up opportunities later on down the line if there are more veterans at that time that, need more advocating for. Alex Buston, Keith Shaw, they're both great advocates for the group. And there's so few of us that all these different issues that we've had have markedly improved since the time I've been here. So hopefully we can do things and bring the group together in a social front. But as far as advocating for different things that we need on campus, it's been pretty easy. For the James Madison program, I got the opportunity to go to DC, which I'd actually never been to DC before. And we got to go to a couple of think tanks. We went to the State Department. We're on the Hill, and we got pretty decent access to all these places and sat down with some incredible people. Hey, I'm a politics major. I love politics. I love the American system. I love international relations. I love all of these things that government's role and everything. And so for me, going to DC was kind of surreal. And especially having the opportunity, the access. I mean, we were in the Pentagon. I was in the military. I was an infantryman. I was on the front line. So seeing where these decisions are being made and where that career could have led, or, the highest echelons of the military was pretty fantastic to see. And so for me, going from the military, and I was in Iraq, to coming to Princeton and then going to DC and being in the Pentagon, it's like, it seems like this, a path that wasn't exactly planned. And I guess in ways it wasn't. My research here, and obviously I'm about to begin it, I haven't started, but I undoubtedly it will surround the effects of COVID legislation in response to the coronavirus and how it's affected the economy. With the track in political economy that I'm taking, ideally what I'll look at is how different states, regions, and countries have dealt with the coronavirus through policy, and how that's affected business owners, whether it's small businesses or giant corporations, and how that has trickled down and affected the everyday consumer citizen. And what that is an incredibly vast topic. But obviously part of the research process is finding some patterns and some insights. So that's what I'm going to focus on for my research. What I end up with, it's still we're still going to find out. I'm also the president of the 501c3 nonprofit, the Ivy League Veterans Council, and our mission is focused on enrolling enlisted veterans in elite universities. And it's called the Ivy League Veterans Council, but it's actually 12 schools from Stanford to University of Chicago to the Ivy League, William & Mary. The justification for our organization to exist is, the national number of veterans enrolled in schools is about 5%. At any of these given institutions in the Ivy League or otherwise, it's less than 1%. And in a lot of cases, a lot less than 1%. With people like Alex and some other advocates that champions of our cause on campus and at other campuses, the numbers have been increasing and slowly. But again, we're an interesting demographic that has different needs than the typical student. We're at different stages in our lives, families, children, service dogs, all these things that veterans tend to have, the typical student didn't. So finding a place for us was a difficult path, but Princeton has markedly improved in a lot of these situations. I came to Princeton because I love the academic setting it has. When I'm on campus, I feel like I'm supposed to be learning. I have no problem with going to Firestone Library and buckling down in one of the cubbies. I love pulling the books from the shelves. I love sitting down, raising my hand in class, staying after class and asking the professor questions, having just a conversation, creating a relationship. So for me, putting my backpack on and walking back on campus, there's, not much like it, especially when fall hits, the leaves start changing. It's really easy to learn that. One of the things that, and I've had this sentiment with a few other veterans where, times get tough, it's stressful. Obviously, Princeton's a very rigorous university to be at. And, I can always remind myself that this isn't Iraq. And I've been in a lot more stressful situations. And I think at the end of the day, that is an incredible asset that I have. At the end of the day, I'm here, I'm happy. So it's very easy for me to relax and not be so stressed and worked up, and make sure I have my priorities straight and ultimately just try to succeed and be healthy at the same time.
We hope you enjoyed hearing about Kaller's experiences at Princeton so far. For more information about support for military-affiliated students at Princeton, please visit the transfer section of the Emma Bloomberg Center for Access and Opportunity website at access.princeton.edu. There you'll learn more about how Princeton works closely with our student veterans to support their academic and co-curricular interests. Meet Princeton's audio engineer is Nick Dinoli of Orange Box Pictures. Mary Buckley and I, Vivian Slee, are producers. Bryant Blunt is our co-host and consultant, and original music was composed by Molly Truman from the class of 2024. And a very special thank you to our student guest, Kaller Roemer, for his contributions to this episode. And a big thank you, especially to our listeners, for tuning in. Thanks so much again for joining us. A very happy Veterans Day to you all, and we hope you'll join us again next time on Meet Princeton.